Festival here at the ranch. Lara Logan's going to be our MC. We have Nick Searcy here, Chad Prather going to be here. We're going to have to update the photo. Bo Pony's going to join us now too. And look at all the music. It's going to be a comedy and musical festival here on the ranch, and we'll be doing baptisms, and we'll be honoring the J6ers. So I think there's about 100 J6ers that are coming to the ranch. This will be the biggest get-together, I think, so far of all the January 6ers. So we're going to do a little honoring them on the day of, and a little Texas barbecue for them on the Friday night during the rehearsals of the band. So come join us in Mount Pleasant, Texas on the ranch. All right, donations for studio renovation. You can see there, we've come a long way. We've sent some pictures out on social media how far we've come. It's absolutely amazing, the studio. As you build things out, you know, the costs go a little bit further than what you thought. So we are looking to kind of make that up. Studio renovation, upgrade, anything on your heart to help us get over the hump. It is going to take the His Glory Network to the next level. Absolutely amazing. So we hope to have that up and running in the next, by April 1st is what the goal is. So stay tuned. It is about 95% done. And thank you for anything you can do to help us get to the next level. This will allow us to get to 1 billion souls in the 7 mountains through satellites, internet, and the world, and more to come. So we're planning on phase 2 and phase 3 as well. All right, those are the updates. It's time for Dr. Scott Young. Doctor, good to see you again.
How you doing?
Good.
I was
saw you in
Dallas. Your initial point where you have Psalms 91. It's what was part of my miracle healing too. So that's kind of an interesting quote there too. So.
Yeah, we do that over every broadcast so that we have the protection of the Most High on everything we talk about. So let's get started. What is DOGE doing in AI and deleting the budget crunch?
So every time I looked at DOGE, you see it come on, and it comes on so quickly. They'd show huge portions of data that don't make any sense. You're going, how do they find it? An example, I have something on the screen, my own screen over here, is that you can. They had a political payment, and it was from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And it was $635,000 that was going out. What they did is they recovered that payment, and it's crazy because they're finding whole bunches of those kinds of things that are out there. But how, and you ask the question, how are they actually doing it? Mm-hmm. On one side, we have Trump talking about AI, which makes a lot of Christians really scared because they're worried about its mark of the beast kind of thing. And I always say, listen, you always got to follow what Scripture says related to mark of the beast. We walk through, Revelation 13 goes from the Antichrist, which is the first beast, comes out of obscurity, to the false prophet, comes out of obscurity again, to the image of the beast, which is a type of AI type of thing. And then we have the mark of the beast, right? And yet the world wants us to have the mark before we ever get the beast, hijacking the order. In this circumstance, and I'm not trying to, say AI is perfect, but it is finding things that just can't be found that quickly. And so I believe what we're seeing is a type of a quantum financial system looking through data in a blockchain. And I believe what's happening in there is we have a blockchain that's looked up from a transparency level, and it's finding out exactly those things that we're looking at, saying, why are we making a political payment for $635,000? I mean, don't we want consumer financial protection to protect me,
right? Not
give them a whole bunch of money?
Absolutely. So how much do you think overall they're going to find? Somebody told me over the weekend, they think they're going to be able to cut by July or find in savings of $2 trillion, not the $1 trillion that Elon is talking about, but double that.
Well, Elon said this during one of the rallies, and he made a comment. He goes, well, I think we're just going to come up with $2 trillion. And I thought, well, that's a very interesting statement, because you have never been able to see the actual balance sheet of the Fed. They have hid their information so dramatically. So if you go to doge.gov and / I think it's spend. There's also spend and savings. You pull both of those up, and they're fascinating parts. They will tell you the balance sheet of what is being spent out there. And if you look at it, does from fiscal year 2019 versus fiscal year of 2024. So that's part of Trump's time frame, but that's also during that COVID period of time. It shows you that they spent about I'll have to get the numbers perfect here, but like $1.8 trillion more in a 5-year span. Then you also notice that they had as much as maybe $1 trillion that they received more in revenues. And you say, well, wait a second, if we back off on revenues, because they're actually going to have the killing of the IRS, then you say, well, how are they going to afford everything? Trust me, all of the other things that he wants to spend on, like tariffs, are going to kill off all of that process. And so, we are massively over budget right now. So the DOGE part is showing you that there's so many more things that we can kill off. And, there are as many as 14 different agencies that spend about $4.7 trillion a year. And you're like, for what? And they're just fake payments everywhere. That's why when the Democrats just scream and rail against it, I say, what do you mean? You want to spend for some crazy things in Zimbabwe or wherever that might be?
There's a money trail to that too, right? It's going to come back to them. Not just Democrats, but there's going to be some Republicans that is going to show that they were taking money. Right. And I think one of the things that we need to see here is DOGE is dealing with the now and the future. And so I always say this, this is the thing that most people don't realize. If your son or daughter came to you, so I have a son, for instance, and he came to me and said, Dad, I'm so over budget, I don't know what to do. I'd say, okay, well, let's look at how much you're making. And let's just make up some terms, because this will give you an example of what actually is happening through the Fed. If he was making $35,000 a year, but I find out that he's spending $100,000 a year in whatever funds that he's coming up with, he's probably pulling it from credit. Well, if he's done it for only 6 months, a year, you might be able to help him out a little bit. You might be able to get him in line, that 35 to 35 kind of thing. The problem is, if you found out that he'd been doing it for 5 years, you'd say bankruptcy. And guess what? Even all economists are talking about this. We haven't fixed the past issues. Right. We're at the edge of bankruptcy and far beyond that. And so the answer is, when you say bankruptcy, you say, oh my gosh, the whole system's going down. That's why we have to flip from a fiat currency into a gold-backed currency. And we utilize things called the Executive Order 13818 and actually 13848 that was intimated in September of 2018. What that was going to is telling you we're already in a state of emergency. So do you think President Trump is driving us towards that bankruptcy in a perfect planned way?
And it's going to flip right over very quickly. And so, listen, if we have bankruptcy in America, and he's always said this, if you bankrupt America or you knock out America, the whole world goes down. So we can't have a complete drop in our capabilities all through America. That would be ridiculous. So firstly, you have to look at what you're spending for the now and the future. That's DOGE. But you still have to deal with the debt of the past. And so you have to deal with the $37 trillion that they have. You have to deal with all the other crazy things that are happening that you can't afford anymore.
I believe it's almost at the door, and I see how he's going to pull this off now. The question is, how can Trump delete the IRS, the Fed, and come back with a gold-backed currency and tie that in with crypto, but keep the dollar going as well?
Well, I believe, and I've been talking about, the deletion of the IRS, the deletion of the Fed for 5 years. People laughed at me, thought I was a crazy nut. And then Trump started telling you little clues. Some of the gorgeous clues that he would say is he said, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and no tax on Social Security. Now, as a person, I'm a small business owner, and I have to go on to my payroll site, and I'll have to put in, if they're an hourly person, I might put in their hours in that particular time frame. I might put in their overtime. I might put in some type of bonus structure, whether it's a commission or bonus. By the way, that's where tips come in. Okay. And when he said that, I was like, wait a second, that's all of the things that are coming out there. I mean, you have nothing left. When you see your final, I think it's W-2 at the end of the year. Always get those mixed up. But when you see your final thing that says $50,000 that you made, well, it doesn't separate out, this bonus structure or this thing or your overtime or anything else. It just says, one simple number, and then a certain amount goes to state and a certain amount goes to federal, FICA, or to, Social Security and Medicare, right? And so he used a brilliant form of saying, we're going to kill off all three of these points. And the answer is, he's just telling you in code that he's killing off the IRS. And then we have him say things like, well, we got to figure out what's in Fort Knox, because there's nothing in Fort Knox, and there hasn't been for a very long time, which what that does is it crumbles the major industries in what they've been holding up our financial institutions, because they're backed by gold. And that's what most people don't realize. It really is, debt points are backed by gold that is supposedly held at the Fed. Through the Fed, through, Fort Knox or wherever else they might have it. But it hasn't been there for generations. So guess what? Those kinds of systems are just telling you that it's going to be gold backed. And I believe that the quantum financial system that is meant to be private for Scott and Pastor Dave, what it's going to be for the government is fully transparent, that you can see inside of the blockchain. And I believe that we've been seeing inside that blockchain since at least 2020, and we might have been seeing it since 2009, which is even scarier that we've had that capability to look at it. And so how does the gold-backed currency actually work? Well, first off, Trump, through the PPP loans back in April of 2020, sublimated the Fed underneath the Treasury, because those loans were given out to small businesses like me. Listen, I would not have made it without that kind of thing, because they closed us down, and they gave us the loans so the banks got paid and Scott got paid to keep the employees going, and yet no one had to pay anything back. You go, wait a second, where is that coming from? They were taking all the money from the Fed and putting it through Treasury. And so when this thing kind of flips, we'll see the Fed wipe off the map and Treasury setting the rate of gold. I used to think, some people would say it was going to set at 2,500. I used to say it was going to be 5,000. Man, that puppy could be as high as 10,000, 27,000. I mean, it depends on how you might look at that. So the Treasury will then set a rate for gold, and then we will have something we like to call the U.S. Treasury note. So just look a little different. And the banks are already preparing it. They have machines in the back that you haven't really seen that are prepared for that kind of currency. But we had to unhook the SWIFT systems of the Fed so that they couldn't get in there and mess with us anymore. And I believe that how do we say what cryptos are doing? Well, cryptos are the perfect payment systems when you move money from bank A to bank B. So cryptos are going to make a ton of money out there because the banks are going to have to pay them to move that money. In the past, it was done by the SWIFT codes or the Fed doing it. So the cool thing is, guys, it doesn't matter if you had money in gold and you had money in crypto or whatever. It is going to be a constitutional-based money that is stipulated under the first article in the 8th section, first article in the 10th section, that says Congress can make the currency, and they separate it out to the Treasury that has to be done in gold and silver. And so this thing is all constitutional. It's all legal. And that's what most people haven't seen. And we're standing on the doorstep. Even Scott Bessent, if I say that name wrong, the Treasury chairman, is saying it's going to go away. And then you had Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary. Well, now we're gonna kill off income tax for everyone lower than 150K. And I'm going, no, he's telling you the whole secret. They're not going to have IRS taxation for anyone, because all of that money goes to pay down the debt at the Fed, and for all of these idiotic DOGE things that we're seeing right now. They don't pay for the roads. They don't pay for the schools. They don't pay for any of those things. Excise tax, tariffs, and sales tax pay for those kinds of things. So we have to have some type of external tax revenue service, which is what he was calling it, the ERS or whatever the heck he's going to say. And he's going to utilize that system to be able to pay for the small level of government that it already is.
Wow, absolutely major changes. So if gold goes to 5,000, it just broke over 3,000 for the first time today. What about silver? Silver will probably go even higher than that.
Oh, yeah. And I believe that, for instance, I mean, again, I used to say 5,000. I am more convinced now, 7, 8, 10,000. I mean, that's just my low number. A friend of mine, Mark Z, he and I have a regular call on Thursdays. He thinks it's more like 27K because of some of that stuff. So wow. Treasury would set that rate. So for instance, let's say Dave had, 1 ounce of gold. That's all he had in his pocket, right? And he goes down to, that local area where he wants to sell the ounce of gold. And let's say it's 10K, just for the heck of it. So he sells it for 10K. Well, he's worried. Well, wait a second. What about capital gains taxes? That's out the door because the IRS is gone too. So in those situations, he just pockets that 10K and la-di-da's down the road with that. But silver is one of the much more valuable rates, which right now I think it's 34 last I looked at it. And so you say, well, what about silver? Well, it is going to be a roving number, and it's going to go very high. It could be 300 times that amount.
Wow.
But what that does is it kills off the debt systems, because do you know that the banks and those massive corporations have stuff on their balance sheet that are so toxic they can't possibly live with it today? We are 30 times worse in a dramatic point when you look at corporations and banks. We're 30 times worse than the Great Depression. This thing is coming down, and it's going to be a good thing, but the only people it's not going to be good for, in Executive Order 13818, it says that I'm blocking your property, which is a type of bankruptcy, to anyone who has crimes against humanity.
Yep.
And I know that if you guys listen, to Pastor Dave, he has all kinds of people on that talk about the crimes against humanity. They talk about, the child trafficking. Man, that's the stuff we need to be mad at. That's the stuff that will rip them down at the core. And so I'm super excited for that kind of stuff, because when you take that stuff and you take justice and you say, I'm just taking your money, we're in essence doing a reverse Robin Hood from a full-on level, and we're going to have that transferred out to the people so that they can see the wealth, they can grow in wealth and not be taxed, which is James 5, I think it's 1 through 5, where you're pulling back the reins of the work animal in essence, which is exactly what the IRS is. I'm super excited about that.
Wow. So what, in the last minute or so, the average American is saying, what do I do? What do I do with my stocks? And I know you're not a financial analyst, but what would you say for people to prepare for this?
Well, I moved all my money to gold and silver. I mean, I just pulled it, I mean, you could easily do it tomorrow. You can pull it out and you can actually move it into gold and silver. And I'm sure Dave has some products that you guys could look into with that. These guys know how to do that. And if you want to sell it, you can just go run right back over and sell it, and then jump back in the market when it stabilizes with it too. That's one way, very simple way of doing that. But you're going to see the lack of IRS. You're going to see lack of regulations that are pulling you behind. You're going to find ways that you can do things you've never been able to do before. And so everyone from the lowest strata to the highest strata of our economic realm is going to say, wait, I'm boosted up.
Yeah, we're truly going into the golden age.
And I believe, and I believe, like you believe too, I believe that we're about ready to see, that nearing that end of the age where 1, maybe 2 billion souls are going to come to Christ. And we're going to be able to do that because we're going to be able to send out that money.